The neon lights of the roadside diner flickered against the dark sky. Inside, Ryan Carter sat at the counter, finishing his black coffee. He had been on the road for hours and just wanted a quiet meal before heading home. Outside, a group of bikers pulled into the parking lot. Their leader, Derek Shaw, adjusted his leather jacket and nodded toward Ryan through the window. "That guy looks like he's got some cash," Derek muttered. His crew, Mike, Jason, and Luke, chuckled. They were used to preying on lone travelers. To them, Ryan was just another easy target. What they didn't know was that Ryan wasn't just any man. He was a highly trained U.S. Army veteran, a fighter who had seen combat in some of the most dangerous war zones in the world. As Ryan paid his bill and stepped outside, he immediately sensed something was off. Years of military experience had sharpened his instincts. The way the bikers lingered by their motorcycles, the way they whispered among themselves, it all pointed to trouble. But Ryan wasn't afraid. Derek approached him first. "Hey, buddy. Got a light?" Ryan kept his expression calm. "Don't smoke." Jason stepped forward, blocking his path. "Then maybe you got some cash for a few fellas down on their luck?" Ryan sighed. "I think you've got the wrong guy." Mike grinned, pulling out a switchblade. "Oh, I think we got the right one." Ryan looked at the knife, then back at the men surrounding him. They had no idea what they were about to face, and Ryan was about to teach them a lesson they'd never forget. Ryan Carter stood still, his muscles relaxed but his mind sharp. The bikers surrounded him, their confidence evident in their smirks. They thought they had the upper hand. Derek flicked his wrist, motioning for Jason to move closer. "Look, man, we're just asking nicely. Don't make this hard on yourself." Ryan exhaled, scanning each of them. 4 men. 1 knife. Overconfident. "No real combat training." "Walk away," Ryan said, his voice calm but firm. "You don't want this fight." Mike chuckled, twirling his switchblade. "Oh, we do." Ryan shook his head. They had no idea what kind of storm they were about to unleash. Jason lunged forward, aiming to grab Ryan's jacket. "Big mistake." In a flash, Ryan grabbed Jason's wrist, twisted it sharply, and with a swift step, sent the man crashing face-first into the pavement. The bikers froze. Jason groaned, clutching his arm in pain. Derek's grin disappeared. "What the?" Ryan's voice was even. "That was your first warning." Luke pulled out a metal chain, swinging it threateningly. "You think you're tough, huh?" Ryan remained motionless. His training was kicking in. He knew how to read their movements, where their weight shifted, where their eyes focused. These guys were street thugs, nothing more. Mike rushed in next, swinging his blade at Ryan's side, but Ryan moved like a ghost, stepping back just enough, then grabbing Mike's wrist in a vice grip. With a single twist, Ryan forced the knife from his hand and shoved him back. Mike stumbled, eyes wide. Ryan picked up the knife and tossed it to the ground. "Last warning. Walk away." Derek's face twisted in rage. "You just signed your death sentence." Ryan sighed. They weren't going to listen, and now, he had no choice but to end this fight, for good. Ryan Carter stood his ground. The bikers had lost their cocky smirks. Now, they were angry. Furious. Derek, the leader, clenched his fists. "You think you're some kind of tough guy, huh?" He turned to Luke and nodded. "Teach him a lesson." Luke swung his metal chain in a wide arc, aiming straight for Ryan's head, but Ryan was faster. He ducked just in time, letting the chain whip past him, then surged forward with explosive speed. He grabbed Luke's wrist mid-swing, yanked him forward, and drove his knee into Luke's gut. The biker choked out a breath, doubling over in pain. Before Luke could react, Ryan spun him around and sent him crashing onto the pavement. The other bikers hesitated. They weren't used to fights going this way. Jason, still holding his injured arm from earlier, looked at Derek. "Dude, this guy ain't normal." Ryan dusted off his jacket. "I told you to walk away. This is your last chance." But Derek wasn't backing down. He wasn't just any street thug, he was a man who ruled through fear. He wouldn't let some random stranger humiliate him. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a pistol. The air turned deadly in an instant. Mike and Jason stepped back, clearly uneasy. Even they weren't expecting this. Ryan's gaze hardened. A gun changed everything, Derek sneered. You think you're tough? Let's see how tough you are against a bullet. Ryan inhaled slowly, steadying himself. He had been in worse situations before. If Derek was about to pull that trigger, he wouldn't live to regret it. Ryan was trained for moments like this, and in the next second, he made his move. Derek's fingers tightened around the trigger. His eyes gleamed with arrogance. He thought he had won, but Ryan Carter had faced deadlier enemies than street thugs with cheap guns. He moved before Derek could even react. In a single, fluid motion, Ryan grabbed a loose brick from the alley floor and hurled it straight at Derek's wrist. Crack! The gun fired, a wild shot that missed completely. Derek let out a howl of pain as the brick smashed against his hand, sending the gun flying. Before the others could process what had happened, Ryan was already in motion. He lunged forward, closing the distance in seconds. Derek barely had time to curse before Ryan's fist connected with his jaw. Hard, the impact sent Derek stumbling backward, dazed. Ryan didn't stop. A second punch. A third. Derek's knees buckled. His bravado shattered. Mike and Jason looked at each other, panic creeping into their expressions. This wasn't supposed to happen. Luke, still groaning on the ground, tried to crawl away, but Ryan stomped his boot down on Luke's back, pinning him in place. Don't. Ryan's voice was ice cold. Jason, the smallest of the group, threw his hands up. We don't want any more trouble, man. Ryan's piercing gaze locked onto him. Then leave. And don't come back. Mike didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed Jason's arm and bolted, leaving Derek and Luke behind. Derek, still on his knees, spat blood onto the pavement. His arrogance was gone. His gang was gone. Ryan crouched down beside him. Next time you pick a fight, make sure you're not outclassed. Derek glared at him, but he said nothing. Ryan stood up, took one last look at the defeated gang leader, and walked away. He didn't look back. Derek groaned as he struggled to his feet. His face was swollen, his pride shattered. He wiped blood from his mouth, glaring at Ryan's back as he disappeared into the night. Luke coughed beside him. What the hell was that, man? Derek's jaw clenched. He's gonna pay for this. Jason and Mike had already vanished, proving their loyalty was as weak as their courage. But Derek wasn't done. We're not letting this slide, he growled. Luke, still catching his breath, shook his head. Did you not see what just happened? He destroyed us, man. We need to let this go. But Derek wasn't listening. His bruised ego screamed for revenge. He got lucky, Derek muttered, trying to convince himself. Next time, we'll be ready. Luke sighed. He had a bad feeling about this. Meanwhile, Ryan walked calmly down the street, his mind already moving past the encounter. He had fought real battles before. These bikers were nothing compared to what he'd faced in combat, but something nagged at him. He had seen Derek's type before. The kind who didn't know when to quit. Ryan knew the fight should have been over, but something told him Derek wouldn't let it go. He could sense trouble brewing. As he reached his small apartment, Ryan took a deep breath. If they came back, he would be ready. What they didn't realize was, Ryan Carter never lost twice. The night was quiet, but Ryan's instincts told him otherwise. Years of military training had sharpened his senses, making him aware of danger before it struck. As he sat in his dimly lit apartment, sipping a cup of coffee, he noticed something, the faint sound of motorcycles approaching. He set his cup down and stood up, his muscles tensing. They were back, outside. Derek and his crew rolled up in front of Ryan's building. This time, they had brought reinforcements, 3 more bikers, all just as reckless and arrogant as Derek. We finished this tonight, Derek muttered. He embarrassed us, and I'm not letting it slide. Luke hesitated. Man, I really don't think this is a good idea, Derek ignored him. "Shut up and follow the plan." Two of the new bikers carried weapons, one had a crowbar, the other a chain. They weren't taking any chances this time. Derek stepped forward and shouted, "Hey, tough guy. Come on out. Let's see if you're still a badass when it's 5 against 1. Silence. Then, a voice from the shadows, "You boys sure you want to do this?" The bikers spun around. Ryan stood near the entrance, arms crossed, his expression unreadable that he wasn't afraid. Derek smirked. "We brought a few friends this time. You're outnumbered." Ryan took a slow step forward. "Numbers don't matter when you don't know how to fight." The air grew thick with tension. Derek's hand clenched into a fist. "Get him." The bikers rushed forward, but they had no idea what was about to hit them. As soon as Derek barked the order, the bikers charged at Ryan. They thought it would be an easy fight, 5 against 1. They were wrong. Ryan didn't hesitate. He sidestepped the first attacker, grabbing his wrist and twisting it. A sickening crack echoed in the night as the biker howled in pain. Dropping the crowbar, the second biker swung his chain, aiming for Ryan's head. But Ryan ducked, his military reflexes kicking in. He grabbed the chain mid-air, yanked it forward, and sent the man crashing onto the pavement. Derek and the other two hesitated for a split second. Ryan's eyes locked onto Derek. "You still think numbers will help you?" Derek gritted his teeth. "Get him." Luke hesitated again. He didn't sign up for this. He saw something in Ryan's eyes, a confidence, a power, that made him rethink everything. But the other two didn't care. One threw a punch. Ryan caught his fist, twisted his arm, and used his own momentum to slam him into the side of a parked motorcycle. The last attacker pulled out a knife. Ryan's expression didn't change. "Bad choice." Before the biker could react, Ryan moved fast, too fast. He grabbed the biker's wrist, applying pressure on a nerve point. The knife fell instantly. With a swift elbow strike, Ryan knocked him unconscious. Now, only Derek and Luke remained. Derek took a step back, realizing the impossible. One man had just taken down 4 of his toughest guys, without even breaking a sweat. Luke raised his hands. I don't want any part of this." Ryan's gaze didn't leave Derek. "You're the only one left." Derek's bravado started to crack. For the first time, he felt fear. But he wasn't done yet. He reached into his jacket, and pulled out a gun. Ryan's muscles tensed as he saw the gun in Derek's hand. He had faced threats like this before, in combat, in war zones, in life-or-death situations. But this wasn't a battlefield. This was a back alley in a small town, and the man holding the gun had no idea who he was really up against. Derek smirked, thinking he had just regained control. "Not so tough now, are you?" he sneered, pointing the gun at Ryan's chest. Ryan didn't flinch. His training had taught him one crucial lesson: never show fear. The alley fell silent. The bikers on the ground groaned in pain, but no one moved. Even Luke held his breath, unsure of what would happen next. Then, in a blur of motion, Ryan acted. With lightning speed, he lunged forward before Derek could react. His left hand grabbed Derek's wrist, pushing the gun away from his body. A shot rang out, bang. The bullet hit the side of a dumpster, ricocheting into the darkness. Derek's eyes widened in shock, but before he could fire again, Ryan twisted his wrist in a brutal takedown maneuver. The gun slipped from Derek's grasp and clattered onto the pavement. Ryan didn't stop there. With a swift kick, he sent Derek sprawling onto the ground. Before Derek could even process what had happened, Ryan pinned him down, his knee pressing into Derek's chest. "You should have walked away," Ryan said, his voice deadly calm. Derek coughed, struggling under Ryan's weight. For the first time in his life, he felt powerless. Luke, watching everything unfold, finally made his decision. He ran. Ryan let out a slow breath, his adrenaline still pumping. He grabbed the gun from the ground, unloaded it, and tossed it aside. Then, he stood up and looked down at Derek. Game over. But just as he thought it was done, the sound of approaching motorcycles echoed in the distance. Ryan turned toward the noise. More were coming. The deep rumble of motorcycles grew louder, vibrating through the alleyway like distant thunder. Ryan clenched his fists, his body still buzzing with adrenaline. More bikers were coming. Derek, still lying on the ground, grinned through his pain. "You think you won?" he wheezed. "You're dead, man." Ryan glanced at the gun he had unloaded and discarded. It was useless now. He wasn't armed, but he wasn't defenseless. Within seconds, 3 more motorcycles skidded to a stop at the alley's entrance. Their riders, clad in leather and tattoos, swung off their bikes, their boots crunching against the pavement. "What the hell happened here?" growled the biggest of them, a towering, bald man with a thick beard. His jacket had the name, Crusher, stitched across it. Luke, who had barely escaped, pointed at Ryan. "It's him. He took us all down." The bikers glanced at Derek, who was still groaning on the ground. The sight of their fallen leader sent rage boiling in their veins. "You messed with the wrong crew," another biker sneered, cracking his knuckles. Ryan exhaled slowly, his mind racing. He had fought against worse odds before. But this wasn't a war zone, and these weren't enemy soldiers. They were reckless thugs who thought intimidation was power, but power didn't come from numbers. It came from skill. The first biker charged at him. Ryan sidestepped at the last second, twisting his attacker's arm behind his back in one swift motion. Crack! The biker howled in pain as Ryan dislocated his shoulder with a precise movement. Before the others could react, Ryan was already moving. He ducked under a swinging punch and drove his fist into another biker's ribs. The man gasped, stumbling backward as Ryan delivered a powerful kick to his knee, sending him crashing down. 2 down. Crusher, the biggest one, grabbed a metal pipe from his bike and swung it hard. Ryan barely dodged as it whistled past his face. The fight wasn't over. As Ryan steadied himself, he knew one thing for sure: this was going to be his toughest fight yet. Ryan's muscles tensed as Crusher swung the metal pipe again. This time, Ryan barely dodged in time, the cold steel whistling past his ear. He had to be smart. One direct hit could break bones. The alley was tight, giving him little room to maneuver. The other bikers groaned on the ground, clutching their injuries, but Crusher was still dangerous. "You should have stayed down, soldier," Crusher sneered, his grip tightening on the pipe. Ryan's eyes narrowed. This guy had no idea who he was dealing with. Crusher lunged forward, swinging with full force. Ryan moved fast. Instead of dodging, he stepped in close, inside Crusher's swing. The pipe barely brushed past his shoulder as he delivered a brutal elbow strike to Crusher's ribs. Thud, the big man grunted, staggering back, but he wasn't done yet. He swung again, this time aiming for Ryan's legs. Ryan jumped over the attack and landed a spinning kick to Crusher's jaw. The force sent the biker reeling. For a moment, everything went still. Then, with one last effort, Crusher charged again. Ryan was ready. He sidestepped at the last second, grabbing Crusher's arm and twisting it hard. With a sharp movement, he flipped the massive man over his shoulder, slamming him onto the pavement. Crack! Crusher groaned, his body going limp. He wasn't getting up. Sirens wailed in the distance. Ryan looked up, seeing flashing red and blue lights approaching fast. Someone had called the cops. The remaining bikers, those who could still move, scrambled to their feet and ran. The police cars screeched to a stop. Officers jumped out, weapons drawn. "Hands where we can see them." Ryan raised his hands slowly, knowing the drill. An officer stepped forward, an older man with sharp eyes. His gaze flickered over the unconscious bikers, then back to Ryan. "What the hell happened here?" Ryan exhaled, his adrenaline fading. "Self-defense." The officer studied him for a long moment before nodding. "We'll need a statement." Ryan glanced down at the defeated gang. They had underestimated him. They wouldn't make that mistake again. If you enjoyed this intense story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thrilling content. What would you do in Ryan's situation? Let us know in the comments below. Stay tuned for more action-packed stories. You won't want to miss what's coming next.